And yes, we are live. I'm here with my new friend Calvin. Calvin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Nice to meet you. I met you on PodMatch. I got the t-shirt.
Yeah.
So, as I always do with my guests, I don't really know you. I tried not to learn too much about you because I want to learn as I speak with you. It's more fun that way, and it's more engaging for the listener too. So, I'll have you just walk us through your faith journey. I know you're Christian, but I don't know much about it. If you want to just talk to us about your childhood, how you were raised, and the ups and downs of your journey. Maybe it was all ups, I don't know, but just walk us through everything from childhood till today, how you got where you are today, and then we'll dive into what you're doing now, okay?
Okay. I was born in Northeast Oklahoma. Uh, I was born in an Indian hospital because I am part Native American. Very proud of that. Raised in several different towns in Southeast Kansas and then settled in Southwest Missouri when I was a senior in high school. My early life, I was Methodist, raised a Methodist. But then when I met my wife, she had other ideas.
Ah,
So I became an Episcopalian then, which is where I've been for the last 50 years. So I was a school teacher for 40 years. I worked in a leadership role for a Native American, recognized Native American Indian tribe for 7 years. Um, I've been, I'm an author. I wrote a book, which is my claim to fame at this late stage in life. Um, married to my wife, Vicki, and we were both school teachers. I have two daughters, and wouldn't you know it, they were both in education. My oldest daughter is a drama, uh, drama theater, and in a school district not too far from where we live. And then my other daughter is a librarian in Rogers, Arkansas. So we were all, you know, all in the education field right now, and all, we have kind of a loving, caring gene in our system that makes us real successful in working with other people.
yeah. So can you just outline briefly, if you're comfortable with sharing, about the parents and siblings? How many siblings do you have?
I have one brother.
Just one brother?
He's
Okay.
younger.
Okay. Just
Uh,
like you said that you were were you raised Methodist, or were the parents Methodist? Like how many generations back does that go?
um, well, I can't speak too much for, well, and on one side of the family, they were Baptists.
Oh yeah.
That'd be on my dad's side. Uh, and friends uh, on my Native American side, they were, as far as Christian faith, they were uh, belonged to the Friends congregation.
Oh yeah.
Then,
Oh, Mennonite?
yeah.
Ooh.
And then when my folks got married, uh, they settled. Don't ask me why. They settled for the Methodist faith. I imagine it was a give and take, and uh, but I was a Methodist until I was in high school, and then when I went to college, I met my wife, and she was Episcopalian, and uh, I, went to church with her and really liked it, and I've been with that church ever since.
How would you characterize the difference? Because I've asked a couple of people about the Methodist method. What is the method in Methodist? And they said basically it's kind of rule books, guides, guiding principles, and stuff like that. It was Wesley, I guess, that came up with that.
Yes.
So
Uh,
how do you compare and contrast that? However you would characterize the Methodist way, how would you compare and contrast that with the Episcopalian way? Is the Episcopalian way related to the Anglicans with the bishops
yes.
and all that?
Yes. The Episcopalians, the Catholics, and the Lutherans, I'm comfortable in any of those arrangements. In fact, I'm
Okay.
comfortable wherever I go.
Yeah.
But the Methodist is a little different. maybe I don't know how to classify it. Like you said, rules, but not as conservative as far as the liturgy, not as conservative as Episcopalians.
I
Uh,
see. You're high church compared to the Methodist, right? You're like a high church kind of thing.
well, sort of. In our part of the world, everybody goes towards the middle.
Ah, okay.
There are not too many extremes. The thing about the Episcopal Church is we have managed. I mean, we are what we are, and we're not splitting up, and we're not going here, and we're not having a big convention somewhere and deciding half of us don't belong. We're who we are, and everybody's welcome, and that's it. I mean, and that makes life a lot more simple because in the town I live in now, there's, I mean, I know lots of people that they're not sure what church they have because some of the denominations have changed names or separated out or had whole new sub denominations, and that really hurts
Hmm.
a Christian community. I mean, I know people are struggling, and some of them, and I get tickled at our priest because he said, "Well, it'd be simple; they could all come join us, and then everything would be all right."
Yeah, that's what we say over here too. The same thing. It's like, church unity, Christian unity is so important to me personally. I'm married to an anti-Catholic, and I'm Catholic because I
Oh no!
converted. I converted late in life, and so she said, "Hey, I didn't sign up for this. What are you doing? Like you're a traitor. But I just had to follow the truth where it went because I was atheist for 25 years. I was raised Protestant in the United Church of Canada, which is very liberal. And then I lost my faith at age 14, as a lot of young men do, puberty, hormones, sin, and all that sort of thing. And then for 25 years, I was atheist. And when I came back to God, I found my way into the Catholic Church through the study of history and philosophy. And, I just had to say yes to Christ. And, it annoyed a lot of people. It annoyed a lot of people, friends and family, and especially my wife. But she loves me. She puts up with me, but she makes fun of me. She thinks the Pope is the Antichrist, so I gotta put up with that.
Well, I worked in a Catholic high school for 6 years,
Oh yeah,
uh, and I really enjoyed working there. As far as I mean, it was just a nice. Um, After being in the public schools for like 30 some years,
mm,
it was nice to uh, have a Christian based place to go to work every day.
yeah,
I really appreciated that.
yeah, for sure. I have a whole bunch of questions for you about, religion in general, the Christian faith in general, and stuff like that. But first, I thought maybe it's a good time for you to talk about your book. How many books have you written? Is this your first book, or have you got
I've only
several
written one,
books?
and I put all my energy into that, and it took me 10 years, my
Have you
10 years
got
of
it
energy to
to
come up
show
with
it on the
that.
screen? Have you got it right there where you could show us on the
Uh,
screen?
Actually, I don't.
You don't? Okay, I'll Google it and I'll try to put it on the screen while you're telling me about it. When did you start
Okay.
writing it? Why did you write it? What was the motivation, the inspiration?
Okay.
Talk to us
Uh,
about that. What's the title of it,
it's
by the
called
way?
it's called Bridging the Gap: A Spiritual Journey to Heaven and Back. And the story begins uh, where myself and two of my buddies were out on a day trip. We in college. We were all 19 years old, and like 14-year-olds, we pretty much thought we knew everything. Anyway, what happened was we were in a fiery, explosive kind of a car crash, the kind that makes great movies, but doesn't do so much for you whenever you're suffering. But
Wow.
during this experience, and this is one of those life altering things. I mean, my life has never been the same since then. That was a guardian angel episode in in this story, which was also quite remarkable. And then there was a journey to heaven. And I get more takers when I say near death experience, because people will listen to you then. When you tell me full blown trip to heaven, they think, yeah. But in my opinion, that's what it was. Interesting thing about the journey towards heaven was it started out kind of a deep, dark place that we are in today. As we moved out of that, it was an uncomfortable, creepy kind of a place. And then the closer I moved to heaven, things became way more pleasant, way more warm. So I don't focus so much on the light as I do just the overall demeanor of the atmosphere. A couple of things happened. Uh, um, uh, when I tell a story, I like to say that at the point that I left humanity, the term I like best is my soul was set free. And along the way, then my sins were set free, and I lost my friends. Without sin, the devil couldn't survive. So on that on that journey to heaven, um, I lost. I could see that my sins were forgiven, and I remember the feeling of losing that heavy weight of carrying Satan around with me all the time. Um, and at that point, then, we talk in the Bible about the peace that passes understanding. That is what I felt. That is what I saw. Uh, the whole ordeal. Who knows how long it took? It didn't take too long. And in eternity time, that's another thing. But we did have a conversation. I did have a conversation with God. I never saw God, but we had a heart to heart conversation. And my the decision, the result of that was that I would come back to humanity. I was just about to finish up my degree in education. A special, my special emphasis was to be on working with young people, which I did for 40 years. Uh, and uh, then, and this is the part that wasn't so much covered in the book, but it's a very, very important part of the journey, was, when you're sitting, here and everything's great and you experience this undeniable peace, uh, things are going to get worse. They're not going to get better. So on the way back, then it was just almost instantaneous. The warmth, the whole atmospheric demeanor changed,
Mm.
and we were back down in the basement, so to speak, on the way back. But the shocking thing about it was I didn't realize how much what evil looked like. Let's put it that way. Because on the way back, it's just like you're staring at racism, you're staring at violence and gun violence, and you're staring at poverty and homeless children, and that was somewhat frightening. uh, and I like to say, I feel like we're a lot closer to hell than we are to heaven. It was kind of like you're on the subway and you got off at the last stop, and that's where we're at. And but given that, given that experience, um, you look at everything different, and uh, and sometimes people say, "Well, don't you worry about dying, or don't you worry about?" No, I don't. And it's kind of But what I want to do more than anything is, especially since I'm not working with children anymore. Well, I do. When the time comes, I work with anybody. Um, God kind of points me in a direction, and I head there, and if it's new territory, we work it out. Um, But what I want to do, and the very first thing that dawned on me whenever when this trip was complete, and I got to throw this in too, I did all my recovery at a Catholic hospital,
Huh?
which I think was a wonderful place to deprogram maybe. Uh, and I had people, the nuns and the chaplains were very interested in my healing, and they were very non-judgmental about what I was trying to express, and very supportive. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. The medical treatment was excellent, but the the feelings of the feelings of caring and love and that kind of stuff. Uh, I think that really helped me and
Yeah.
put me on my feet. But I had a terrible, terrible head injury, um,
Is that a
and they
scar right on your eyebrow? Is that a
said
scar?
that's another story. That was
Uh,
lately. You
oh,
might be able to see there's a really tight ear to ear scar there,
wow.
um,
I can't see
and
it.
but I know my doctor did a great job.
You should have told
He
him to
said so.
make it ugly for street cred so you could be tough. You could look tough on the
Well,
subway.
I'll tell you about this other scar in just a minute because there's a funny story there. Um, but that whole experience was just the recovery was just amazing. And but then jump back to the guardian angel.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't tell anybody. I mean, I talked to the nuns about the situation. It was so new. Oh, I mean, you you just you had to. It took a long time to process
Yeah.
that event. But so the only one I ever talked to it about, after I left the hospital, was my mom, and she told me. She said, the day she said we were, he said your father and I weren't even sure where you were going, but you were with your friends, and that wasn't the problem. But but about the time of the accident, uh, and she said, "You told me about your angels. I can tell you about mine now." She said, two uh, angel-like figures appeared and told me that you were in danger, but that you'd be all right. And she said, just seconds after that, the principals came and said, "You need to, your husband's going to pick you up, and you need to get to your son because he needs you." So that's
Mm,
kind of, I mean, that
yeah.
was kind of confirmation for both of us that we weren't, you know, this was a real
Mm,
happening.
yeah. It's a real
But,
grace.
oh, absolutely. Uh, but let me tell you about this scar.
Sure.
This it's almost as good a story. Okay, in our church, we have a hallway between our parish hall and the church, and it's called the Hall of the Apostles. And
Mm,
on the outside into the courtyard, there's stained glass windows for each of the apostles. And I've had some mobility problems. I've got some huge back issues that were just now starting to work out, and that all goes back to that accident 50 years ago. Uh, just wear and tear, things are just slightly off and or slightly off over 50 years, then you got a big problem. But so I was strolling out from church, and all of a sudden, my my left foot just came out from under me, and I hit the edge of the window. It was
ooh.
John the Apostle.
Uh,
He's my
which
buddy
apostle was
now.
it? Which apostle was it though?
John,
Oh, it was John, yeah? Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. Well, that's
because I had
the
to go back and check. But anyway, uh,
wow, the beloved
I hit,
apostle.
and then I was in the pool of blood immediately. I mean, when you have any kind of a
Yeah,
cut on your
yeah,
face, it just
yeah.
bleeds and bleeds and bleeds. And uh, but uh, my wife said, through that whole thing, You had lots of helpers. The people in the church just, and I told her, I said, now this, and I even wrote a piece for the church about how this whole experience showed us how God works through each other. Because the way I felt about it was that God was the one that got me to my feet and found a chair for me to sit in, and wrapped my head up, and helped me get to the car. And then once again, we were off to another Catholic hospital. And
Mm.
my wife said, you didn't, you know, she said, I was worried about you because you were so calm, you're so complacent through this whole thing. And I said, well, I mean, I said, when you're in the arms of Jesus, you have nothing to fear. And I said, then that's what the doctor at the hospital said, what happened to you? And I said, I slipped and fell. And he goes, oh my God, you got to come up with a better story than that. And my 20-year-old grandson, who came with his mom to the hospital and who I didn't think was going to make it through because he doesn't do blood very well.
Uh,
And it was everywhere. He watched the stitching process and everything. And then when they were done and cleaned me up, he goes, he calls me Pappy. He says, Pappy, if you were a lot younger, you'd have an awesome scar.
yeah. How many stitches did you get?
It was only 10. They
Really?
were large, but 4 of them was on the inside.
Huh. Oh,
And
yeah?
uh, and
Oh,
I broke. No, they said broke, but when I went to the specialist, they said you have a hairline fracture in the outside sinus
oh, yeah.
bone.
Oh, yeah.
And
Does
he
that
said,
heal?
I guess. I mean, he said they said they didn't think they needed to do anything else because it wasn't broken really. It was just, he says you can see on the X-ray and see on the CAT scan just a tiny shadow there, and it hasn't really been a problem. Um, but again, another experience, and it was the closest thing as far as being with God
Yeah.
that I've had since the accident 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And
It's a little
uh,
reminder for you just to remind you that God's
well,
with
I mean,
you.
it was an absolute great experience because, and another thing too, we just talked about. I mean, the sermon that day was on how God works through all of us in a community of faith to, you know, to heal the world and all this. And I mean, that just happened, and it was just like, I mean, if I ever write another book or another anything, that story will be one, and there's several others that's happened in the
Yeah.
last 50 years.
Yeah.
Um, but another question that I've asked, I mean, I've done lots of interviews like
Okay.
this.
Okay.
People want to know about humanity, and I said, uh, in 50 years, that's changed a lot. What do you
Mm.
think? He said, people say, well, you worked with kids almost your life. How would you compare the kids you worked with in the 70s and 80s and
Mm.
90s to the
Mm.
kids in school today? And I said, I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, I don't know how the kids today, and not just the kids, but the teachers. Uh, Whenever I was teaching school, we were allowed to be human. We
Oh,
were allowed to. Uh, I mean, we felt it was part of our job that if a child was having a problem, that that you would intercede for them and try to help them through. And even back then, I had not elementary students, sixth graders. They weren't having drug problems, but they were having family drug problems
yeah.
and family. I know I had to deal with a young man that his brother committed suicide,
Mm.
and he was just like maybe 4 years older than the young man that I was working with. And and I like to use this as an example because I got a call. It's how God works. I got a call at home, and they told me what had happened, And so I mean, I just got up and headed for the car, and my wife goes, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'll explain when I get home." I mean, I was headed right over there. Next thing you know, on the doorstep, ringing the doorbell, and I thought, God, you're gonna have to help me here because I'm not sure what's gonna happen when this door opens. But the words were there. The words were there. The whole episode was, you know, I like to say God staged and I was just a messenger. That was
Mm,
my theme through the
mm,
whole book
mm,
was, you know, uh, God took me and He sent me on this mission, and but I'm not, uh, you know, I'm not the coach or the drama. I'm just a messenger. I'm sending the word. I'm trying to make you be comfortable, and most of those kids turned out all right. I can't say they all did, but you do what you can.
yeah. Well, it's a crazy world we're living in. I mean, as I get older, I was born in 70 and some 53, and it just seems like maybe every generation goes through this where they think the world's going mad, but it just seems like the past 10, 20 years have been getting crazier and crazier, and sin is more celebrated than
Okay,
you know what I mean?
good point. Very good point. And
Pornography and all this used to be shameful.
uh,
Now it's like no one's ashamed of the pornography anymore.
no, they're not. And you know, we have baptisms at our church occasionally, and I love. My favorite part of it is when the priest takes the spoil and makes the cross on your forehead and says, "You're marked as God's own forever." And to me, that and every time I hear it, it just sends a chill through me because yes, that is true, but that does not mean that it's going to be an easy road.
No.
Part of the baptismal vows are the people of the church, your parents, they all say, we're going to do our best to make sure that this child is raised in the right way. And well, are they raised in the right way? The church is, I mean, we're desperately trying to do our part. And I really, really feel like that the people that I go to church with are really good people. I mean, I don't feel the need, but and this is interesting. Uh, 50 years ago, whenever I was in charge of I was like a youth minister at our church. Kids back then actually had more trouble than the ones they do today.
Oh,
Uh, I mean, I I don't know. That's really not true, but I'm just saying there were problems that I didn't realize kids could have. But let me back up. I was an elementary school teacher, and my first assignment as a Sunday school teacher was to teach high school kids, and they could drive themselves. And if they didn't like what was going on, you just didn't see them again. And but because of the lessons that I learned in that brief encounter, uh, once again we built a high school class, and then I was virtually in charge of the entire Christian education for the church. And we had a wonderful, wonderful group of parents, and everybody was, truly supportive. And so you say, well, God had His hand on your shoulder, so what else would you expect? I have in a couple of weeks from now, I have to do what we call a ministry moment, where I have to tell something in my life, what God called me to do, and tell me about that. And that's pretty much, I mean, that'll be it. It was a 50, it was a half a century ago that God called me to this church to work with the kids. And 50 years later, I'm on the vestry, and I am ensuring that that kind of education continues. And the priest said, I just love it. He said, just say it nice, loud, and clear, and get out, because that's what I want to hear. That's what they need to hear, because we're rebuilding our young people again, and it's kind of been another one of those blockbuster things. Uh, you cycle through and your church, and then for a while there, we had virtually no children, and then I don't know. I worried about that a lot,
Do
but
do
then
you do you go through a lot of priests at your
you
church?
know we're getting ready to. Right now, we have an interim that is an outstanding. He is so good at what he does. Um, the last one we had was there 20 years, and
Oh,
I would say about
wow.
14 years too long. I mean, I don't like to speak, but I
Oh,
mean, that's long enough to, well, I won't say anything. We all, I think all priests have they're called. I don't
yeah.
argue with that at all. But in this complex world we live in, there's all kinds of. I mean, you almost need subdivisions, even in a small church, to work with the different things that we have to deal with today. And we talked about sin a little bit. Uh, People, you know, you go on social media and you hear people going on and on about how life didn't treat them right and they should know what they're going to do and on and on and on. But if you know those people, you know that um, a lot of their problems comes from an unresolved sin. Uh, and Getting back to the baptismal vows, uh, you're going to be challenged all your life. And if you should fall into uh, the paths of a sinner, I like to refer to that as a disconnect from God. If that becomes, the farther you go down that road, the harder it is for you to. I mean, some people just reach the point where they say it doesn't do me any. I mean, I'm lost, and they
Yeah,
are lost, but they don't
yeah,
understand that they could be found,
yeah.
but they just don't have the energy. And when I was a young man, I used to think everybody, and I mean, after all, I was judged by God, and I
Oh,
know that
mm,
he he can do whatever he wants, and I'm not going to say anybody's not going to heaven because I don't know what's in their heart, and I don't know what they've confessed to. Um, but the last 20 years, I kind of changed my mind. I mean, some people have just gone. I don't know. I
mm,
don't even know if they would. I mean, you went through a time in your life
yeah.
when. How was that like? I mean, I don't.
Well, it's
I,
like in terms of my dark years, my darkest years, it's not that dramatic. I mean, it's just like instead of fighting the temptations, I just didn't fight any temptation, you know? So the only difference now is I'm striving to please God, to not offend God. But I didn't really get up into any really dark and nasty sins by the grace of God. Maybe He protected me from
yes.
getting too deep into, sex, drugs, and rock and roll and all that. I was calling myself a Satanist, but if you looked at my lifestyle, it was pretty prudish and safe, because just by nature, and like I said, by the grace of God, maybe He didn't allow me, like my whole life long, I was surrounded by people doing drugs, and by the grace of God, I never got into anything too heavy. And even the drugs I did try, like marijuana, mushrooms, whatever, it was relatively tame stuff. But I didn't react well to it. I never really enjoyed it. So, I think God does work with us um, to do whatever it takes to save us. And in my case, I could have gone down some really dark paths, and I just didn't, like being tempted with adultery when I was newly married. Like I was actually on my honeymoon, and some sexy young woman came into the store I was working at, and she offered me an encounter, or whatever, and she was married, and she knew I was married. And so by the grace of God, I said no. Um, but a lot of people say yes to that and more, and then there's the corruption that's available to people in the working world when it comes to money, maybe cheat a little bit to get ahead here and there, and then before you know
Yes.
it, you're involved in some kind of mafia and you didn't even know it, and now you can't get out. I mean, Pope Francis talks a lot about the Italian mafia there, and how hard it is to get out. But we're all involved in sin, to greater or lesser extent. And like you said, the deeper you go, the harder it is. So I thank God for the church and for the sacrament of reconciliation, confession that we have. And a friend of mine, I want to give a shout out to a couple of friends in the live chat here. I got my friend Emily and Nicola. Nicola actually asked you a question. He's wondering if your church considers homosexuality a sin, or is it not considered a sin in your Episcopal church?
I don't think it is.
No? And you personally, you don't think it's sinful to
Well, remember what I said when we first started talking about denominations. The Episcopal Church national doctrine is that we love our neighbors, and and so we don't make any we don't make any judgments.
okay.
Um, so I don't think. I mean, my personal feelings is, but then I went through. I mean, I've done some Bible reading. I mean, it bothered me a lot,
Yeah.
and it still does because and I don't think I'm any different than anybody else. I have family members that fall into that category, or they think they do. Uh,
Mhm.
but I mean, yourself that you can change. You can change.
Yeah.
Uh, but my feeling is it really doesn't matter what I think. I mean, the person that you're going to answer to in the end is God, and that's. I mean, it's kind of a crapshoot. I mean, if you want to live that life, but just be prepared because it might not come out the way you want it to, and some of the other stuff that's going on. Um, the I can't think now.
Well,
I
adultery is
think
a good example. Adultery is a good example. A lot of people are tempted by adultery. You would warn them like it's not a good choice, right?
right.
So the
I
same
sure.
thing with someone if they wanted to, you know, do perverted sexual acts with other men or whatever, you would say, well, you could do what you want, but I don't recommend it. It's not a good idea because it's not according to the natural law. God gave us
That's right.
bodies for a purpose, and there's complementarity between the sexes and these sorts of things. You don't need to give the kid a lecture, but you could just say, it's not good, even though it might feel good or whatever when you're on the drugs doing the sex or whatever it is you get up to. Because a lot of people they mix up sex and drugs and rock and roll into this porridge, and it's just they just want to feel good and maybe escape from kill the pain that's inside. A lot of alcoholics they drink a lot to kill the pain, the memories. Maybe they were abused, and a lot of the gay men that I know, they admitted that they were sexually assaulted by men, and they're just sort of like caught up in this cycle where they keep going back to the wound, and they want to scratch that itch that was given to them as a young person. It's very tragic, and women go through this too with sexual assault, and then they ended up acting like horrors, and it's because their uncle raped them or whatever. You know what I mean? It's tragic, and so how do you unravel all that? It's uh, it's really painful, and it's not easy. It's not easy.
Not at all. Um, but that's why I tried to focus my ministry, at least for the earlier part of my life, on kids that could if they were in a bad situation. And one of my favorite things to say was, "You've got 6 years of your education behind you, and you've got 6 years in front of you. But 6 years is not a long time. I mean, you've got to set some standards within yourself, and you may go home and live with hell. But
Mm,
just always keep looking
mm,
forward,
mm,
and because there is a community of faith that will help you, and uh, but you've got to you know you got to ask for help. I mean, and that's just the hardest part, and I
mm,
think that's the hardest part. I have a nephew that was just diagnosed with cancer. I would say he's probably about 37 years old. He was diagnosed with cancer, and I've been, I talk to him as often as I can. But when I found out that he was diagnosed with cancer, that was another of those times when his mother called me and she said, he doesn't want to talk about it to anybody, but he might talk to you. So I picked the phone up and dialed the number, and once again, not sure where the conversation's gonna go, but it was remarkable. The what he had to say.
mm.
Uh, he did have a lot. Now I haven't talked to him again since they've decided what they're gonna do, and I owe him a call. But my problem with it was he had declared that that he didn't believe in God several years ago, and we've been fighting. And I use that word as a warrior, not as a fist fighter. But we have been, working with him, uh, and I have been working with him. Uh, my wife said, "Boy, you're working hard." And I said, "Yeah, I've had him close before, but I'm not letting him get away. But
Uh,
he's talking very, very positive now, and and anytime I send him a mess, and I send him messages quite often, but I always in my conversation with trust Jesus, and uh, if you can just get people to do that, uh, you know, and it's just so hard these days because they've got that doesn't sound like fun. I mean, it doesn't sound like something that they want to
it's
do.
not cool. It's not cool.
They'd rather do something to get in trouble, and then when they get in enough trouble, maybe they'll give it a try, but I just don't
Uh,
understand. And, again, I know people, and, uh, again, and I truly believe that, God has had on my shoulder all the time, and he's pointing me in the direction that I need to go. Sometimes we have to have a chat, like, "I don't know what to do for this person," uh, and basically, it's like you're on your own. Listen and see what happens. Well, as you can tell, I love to talk. So sometimes to get me to listen is it's a bit of a chore. But uh, I mean, I know people that live not far from my house here. That the whole family is dysfunctional. But they they go to church and they believe in God. Um, and life was pretty. It was still dysfunctional, but patriarch of the family died of COVID about 2 years ago, and everybody in that family blames God for that. And I know the mother that lost her husband, and I said, Becky, you can do whatever you want, but don't blame God. You've got to open your eyes and see what's going on. But everybody, and if you when you let down your guard in the world we live in today, you're going to be consumed with things that you don't want. Uh, so
yeah,
it's tough.
if you're not moving forward in the faith, I always say, then you're going to be backsliding. You can't just stand still and expect like, okay, I'm here in my walk with God. Take a break. Well, you take a break, you're going to slide back. I experienced this during COVID 2020, 2021. Because they shut down my churches here, and
Well,
I didn't have access. Yeah, I didn't have access to the sacraments, And so I really suffered. My prayer life suffered, and I fell into sin and stuff like that, and I had to claw my way back. I'm still a little bit messed up, but I'm hurt. I'm wounded. I'm not. I'm not. I lost a bit of the peace and the joy I had because as a 2009 convert, I had like this pink cloud I was riding on. It was just like everything was consolation. Everything was just amazing. And then when I had restricted access to the sacraments, things really went south. And then I saw what I am is just disgusting, weak worm, and nothing good. It's just God. It's only God that's good, you know?
Right.
It's only God that's good.
That's true.
And so he gives us grace, and if Christ is living in us, then yeah, we can appear good, but it's as St. Paul said, it's no longer I who live, it's Christ who lives in me. So that's what we're supposed to be Christ, and we're supposed to see Christ in the other person. But sometimes it can be hard if the other person is antichrist, right? If the other person is telling you they hate God, they hate Jesus Christ, they hate everything that's good, they hate the family, they want to kill the babies. There was a transgender guy, he's pretending to be a woman, and he wants to be the first trans woman to have an abortion. That's his goal in life. Okay. So this is the world we live in. Satan is not afraid to come out of the shadows and just tell it like it is. I'm going to kill the children in the womb for fun and just to get internet points. Okay, that's the world we live in today. So
Yes.
what do you think about abortion? Is that permissible, or just in certain circumstances, or do you think it's never right to kill an innocent child?
No. I'm having worked with children most of my life. Um, I've, I've, you know, I've taught children that were better, were an accident or
Yeah, yeah,
surprise.
of course, of course.
Sometimes it works
Most
out.
of us are.
Sometimes it
Most of us are. I am.
But anyway, um, again, and I guess I'm just kind of liberal, but once again, I think that situation is between a woman and her doctor, but more so than that, it's, once again, the person that's going to have to bless this is not me, and it's not the priest, and it's not the congregation. I mean, they're still, you know, uh, I don't think the Bible necessarily condones it. So then this is something else that bothers me because I mean, some people, the whole issue is drama is what's driving the whole issue.
Uh-huh.
Uh, you're all in or you're all out. And
Ah,
I mean, they these horrible commercials about killing babies
ah,
and on
ah,
and on and on.
ah.
Now, in the back of my head, I'm thinking all along that God's going to take care of His children, whether they're born or not born. Their kids aren't going to suffer. And that's just my weird liberal way of looking at life. But the guilt that goes with that could last could last a lifetime for a parent and for a mom. And I think that the the God that governs us all is going to be the one that's that's another one of those things. Can a sinner go to heaven? Well, I can't tell you. I mean, again, I know that that's the one person that can answer that question. But if they're a sinner and they live a life out and the quality of their life is not going to be worth living. I mean, if
Mm,
they disconnect and
mm,
continue to disconnect, by the time they get to the bottom, they've forgotten what life's really like. And So, you got two choices. You can either beg for help or you can just fail.
Mm.
And there's always that choice. You always have that choice. And uh, so I never, I don't ever give up on anybody.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you just have to say, all I can do is pray because the
Yeah.
rest of it's in your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. You've referred to yourself as liberal a couple of times, but you've lived long enough now to see how the sort of left and right in politics, at least, is malleable, it's changeable. Some of the things that the left used to value, like the little guy, the working class, and all these sorts of things, the man on the street, that's now shifted, and the progressives on the left seem to be on the side of the big corporations, big government, and these sorts of things. So there seem to be a lot of there's a lot of flexibility in what's left, what's right, what's conservative, what's liberal. And my podcast is not about politics, but it's inevitable that, especially on the internet, you're going to hear a lot of politics, even in the context of a religious setting, a religious conversation. So I just wanted you to give me your feedback because you've lived a long time, and you've maybe seen some of the changes in politics from the left and the right, and they're mixing and matching some of these attitudes towards government, business, and the little guy. So what do you think about all that, just briefly?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Um,
Because when you
I'm,
talk about yourself being a liberal, I'm sure that's like an old school kind of liberal
yeah, that's
thing.
true.
It's not the new kind of progressive thing. You're not promoting, you're not actively promoting that little children chop off their genitals, or, any kind of sick perversion like that,
Yeah.
right? You're an
Well,
old school liberal, probably.
yeah. And I will, I will use this bit of information. Uh, I told one of the older members of our congregation, uh, I said, and this is completely against what I just said. I said, I never thought I would be this conservative. So, but then, that's dealing with abortion, dealing with same-sex marriage, dealing with all those kind of things. Uh, you know, the church says that's between you and God, but my feelings are it's all wrong. I'm sorry, but every day we free, every day we confess our sins. We say we love our neighbors as ourselves.
Yeah.
So having said that, I mean, I know the first trans uh, girl, the man that I traveled with this individual, and they still have a soul, and they still, and but I was a little concerned. I mean, I just, I didn't. I mean, it was just I just didn't understand. And now I've got a cousin that's uh, I don't know. Here we go again. What what are you really? I mean, we've gone through this with my cousin, and but then I don't see it. I mean,
Mm, mm,
I don't
mm, mm,
know. I mean, I just feel like, uh, and everybody needs a little, everybody needs to be stroked. Everybody needs a little attention, and sometimes people go way, way, way
yeah,
off
yeah, yeah,
page
yeah.
to get their, you know, 15 minutes of fame, and that even complicates the world more. I
Mm,
mean,
mm,
uh, but I mean, I feel like um, every day, you know, uh, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I just feel like uh, it's my duty to do the best I can to get people uh, on the road on the road to heaven, to
Yeah.
build the kingdom. That's what I like
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
say.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for
I think
that. I've given you some pretty uncomfortable topics to tackle, and you've done a good job. So I'm going to ask you something before we wrap it up, because I have to wrap it up at the 1 hour mark today. But I want to ask you about the Amerindian or the native stuff. And I'm reading a book slowly and part-time, sort of reading this book about the Catholic Church, how they came to North America in the 1620s, 30s. This particular Jesuit missionary who came, and how he encountered the native peoples, different tribes, and the different reactions he got. A lot of them were very positive. They worshiped the Great Spirit, and they didn't have a problem, and they were thirsty and hungry for the truth of Jesus Christ and the Trinity, God the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It wasn't a problem. They wanted the truth and they were hungry for the truth. And when the religious Christians came to teach, they were happy and they accepted the teachings, a lot of them. Okay. So I want to get your perspective. Have you looked into your own history? Because you said you belong to a native population there. Just talk to me
yeah.
about that, and with an emphasis on spirituality, and what is it with the romanticized vision that we, the white man, have about the natives, the noble savage, and your ecology and all these sorts of things. What's a reality check when it comes to your ecology, when your spirituality in these native communities, from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective and from my native community, um, we do the Great Spirit. We have some ceremonies, um,
What's your tribe
but
called?
it's the Seneca-Cayuga Nation of Oklahoma. They're displaced Iroquois
Oh,
from the
really?
east
Oh,
that
really?
were sent to
Oh,
reservations in Oklahoma.
okay.
Uh, but I would say I would say 90% of them are Christians. Um, and
Ah,
when I was on the council and we were having all this, uh, there were some that were on this. You know, we've been taken in by the white man,
right, right, right.
blah, blah, blah,
Colonialized. Yeah.
colonialized. That's the word I was looking for. But most of them are Christians, and they wanted, we were having a real big issue about that, and being on the council, I wanted to try to help figure this out. So we went back and to all the records and found out that almost every one of those uh, ancestors of the ones that were thinking that they needed to dance around the fire, and that almost all of their relatives had Christian funerals, and that they were
Ah,
indeed believe in God. Now, from my personal perspective, uh, uh, there's one God. I mean, and I know that God, and I know that that's the same God for my Native American brothers and sisters, and it's the same God for any other of these collective groups of people. Uh, and but I mean, once again, that's a hard. And sometimes it's a hard line to pitch. Even though I'm sure. I mean, I've had that experience, and I know. Um, but this, I'd say, in the last, well, really, I got kind of vocal during COVID because uh, I had a little podcast,
ah,
and I found out that I could talk. uh, but before that, I mean, all this stuff that my whole arsenal of stuff that I learned in my heavenly journey were kind of buried. I mean, it was like
ah.
after I wrote the book, it wasn't particularly popular, but it's been republished, and right now, uh, I'm looking for a little bit of renewed, and there is some renewed
Interesting.
interest in it. But I'm my future, I want to get hooked up with some with Speakers Bureau and maybe go out and do talks in churches and for teachers and for anybody else that needs to be inspired, uh, because that seems to move more. In this day we live in,
Mhm.
what we're doing right now is probably more influential than trying to sell a book.
Yeah.
I mean, I've come I've come to realize that, uh, because I don't know how many people listen to your
Not too
podcast.
many, not too many, no. It's very
Yeah,
small. It's very small. Because the reason that I tell myself anyway is because, there are certain bandwagons that you can hop onto that are popular, and I just don't hop on the bandwagon. Like if I wanted to make fun of Pope Francis, or if I wanted to inject a lot of politics, that instantly boosts your numbers. And there's different bandwagons on the left and on the right, and it's easy to identify. So you just give the people what they want. But I don't do that. What I do is
no,
I just have guests on and talk to them about their faith journey, and because that's what I want. It's not what the people want, maybe, but it's what I want. I want to meet people and hear their faith journey. So yeah, I don't have a lot of listeners, but they're devoted, and they're very kind people. Most of them are Christian, but some of them aren't. All nice people, and
yeah,
built a lot of friendships with this. So
yeah.
I agree with you. This new technology is very good for that. Very good for that.
Well, I think it's the way to talked to a podcast yesterday, and he said, if we'd invented podcast, wouldn't we all be rich? Because that's and my grandsons are in their early 20s, and they said, podcast is what radio used to be.
uh,
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 you know, People like to listen to, they'd rather listen to something than read it.
yeah, that's the way it
So
is.
what
That's the
you're
way it
doing
is
is
today.
very important.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming on. It's been an hour, but I want to have you back just to chat some more and to pick your brain, all your wisdom and your experiences. And you've got a lot to say. And is there any sort of final thought, maybe that links together your experience with the listener who might be out there that might be sad, depressed, lost, or unsure about how they could get forgiveness from God. There's a lot of people out there that don't really talk about it, but they're questioning if God could forgive them, or if God really loves them, because they realize deep down that they're sinners, right? Even if they're atheist, right? So what would you say, like, as a message of hope?
Well, in all of my work with people, it begins with belief. You have to believe in something. Um, my recommendation was believe in Jesus, believe in God. They're there to help you. Once you establish some kind of belief, then there's that trust. You have to find somebody that you can trust. You'll find out that there's lots of people around uh, that may be just like you are. Uh, and then the most important of all is love. We're all seeking love. Um, we want to be loved, um, and that's to me that's my my three things: belief, trust, and love. Um, and if you can work yourself into that, you'll be all right.
Yeah, well, that's what we're taught, is that we need the theological virtues of faith, hope, and love. That's basically what you've outlined there for us.
Right.
So, and without those, I mean, without those, it's shocking to say it, but if you don't have those, you can't go to heaven. So, it's no pressure on anyone, but you have to have faith, you have to have hope, and you have to have love. But that's a good thing, right? It's good to have faith.
Yeah,
It's good to believe something. It's good to have hope.
right,
If you don't
right.
have hope, you're hopeless. So it's good to have hope. It's good to have love. Who doesn't want love? Like you said, everyone knows they want love. So beautiful message. and you're a beautiful man. Thank you for coming on. Is your wife bold enough and brave enough to come on an episode and talk to me about her perspective on her faith journey?
I don't know if she is or not.
Is
We're
she
still
shy?
kind of,
Okay. Is she
you
First
know,
Nations?
she likes to talk just as much as I do.
Is she also First Nations or no?
No.
She's not First Nations. What's her ethnic background?
I
Mixed,
don't
mixed,
know.
mixed race.
American.
She's American, pure blood American. Okay.
Redheaded American at that.
Oh, is she redheaded?
Not
Oh,
now. We all share the gray hair of wisdom, you know.
oh, yeah. Amazing to meet you, my friend. So I hope you pray for me and mine. I'm sure your prayers are very powerful.
I will.
And you're getting lots of graces from my end because I enroll all my guests in a perpetual mass. So there's a mass being said for you and your family every day until the end of time, even if you end up in purgatory. I don't know if you believe in purgatory or not in your Episcopalian church, or do you?
I don't know that much about it.
Okay, okay, okay. Anyway, the point is you're getting prayers said for you, so if you could pray for me and mine. Great to meet
I
you.
will.
Great to meet you, sir, and we'll talk again, okay?
Okay.
Take good care. All the best.
All right. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you. Had
Goodbye.
fun. Bye-bye.